Can you grab Pete for me if he's right there? Pete. Thank you, everyone. Please be seated. All right, then, the state may call its next witness.
Call Dr. Linda Bidzricki.
All right, good afternoon, Dr. Bidzricki. If you would please make your way to the witness stand, which is to my right, up one riser. When you get there, please remain standing, raise your right hand, and my clerk, Teresa, who's on my left, will swear you in.
Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you're about to give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you. Please be seated. First thing I will ask you to do is to state your first and last names for the record and spell each.
Linda, Lynda, Biedzricki, Biedrzzycki.
Thank you. Go ahead, your witness.
Thank you. Dr. Bidzricki, how are you employed?
I'm the medical examiner for Waukesha County.
How long have you been the medical examiner for Waukesha County?
About 25 years.
And can you briefly describe for the jury your education and training that you obtained prior to becoming the medical examiner?
Yes. I went to medical school at the Medical College of Wisconsin. I did an internship in internal medicine. Then I did general pathology training, which is anatomic study of tissues, and clinical, which is laboratory medicine. 4 years of that at several different places, including the Medical College of Wisconsin, University of California, and William Beaumont Hospital. I did a fellowship in forensic pathology, which is the study of trauma and legal medicine in Detroit at Wayne County. And I did a year of cardiac pathology at Brigham and Women's Hospital in Boston.
Thank you. Direct your attention to November 22nd, 2021. Did you perform an autopsy on a Tamara Durand?
I did.
And did you prepare, as a result of the autopsy that you performed, an autopsy protocol?
Yes.
Did you also prepare a diagram for court in order to summarize your findings from your autopsy protocol?
I did.
Okay. In front of you, you should have State's Exhibit number 59, which is the autopsy protocol for Tamara Durand.
Yes.
Did you see that? Okay, and then I'm going to show in front of you Exhibit 166. It will be on the screen in front of you shortly. Ma'am, looking at the screen in front of you, is that your diagram that you prepared for testimony today, which shows your summary of the autopsy protocol, the injuries to Ms. Durand?
It is.
Okay. Can you describe for the jury, well, first of all, when did you perform the autopsy on Ms. Durand?
On November 23rd.
And were you aware that this was as a result of an incident that occurred in downtown Waukesha on November 21st, 2021?
Absolutely.
Overruled. Her answer may stand.
Did you go to the scene on November 21st, 2021?
I was there.
Okay. What were your findings with regard to Ms. Durand?
She had two groups of injuries, I like to say. One is from the impact of the car with the body, and these injuries include the marks on her hips that you can see on the posterior.
And I'm just going to ask the court, I apologize, permission to admit Exhibit 166 and 59 into evidence, and permission to publish 166.
Objection.
The objection is noted. It is overruled. Exhibits 59 and 166 are both received. Permission to publish 166 is granted.
I apologize. If you can start over with that testimony, they didn't have the diagram in front of them.
There are two groups of injuries, which is typical in a pedestrian injury. One is from the impact of the car with the body, and the external evidence of that are the marks on the back of her hips, which I indicated their heights between 34 and 38 inches, the abrasions and bruises, the red and blue marks. And those points of contact resulted in fractures of the pelvis on the right, which is indicated with green or dark lines across the pelvis on the skeleton picture. So the car struck her hip, broke her pelvis. The other injuries that are characteristic of pedestrian injuries are the small abrasions on her toes on the right. You see little red marks on the toes. She did not have the shoe on the right foot. The impact of the car with the body pulls the foot out of the shoe. This is very characteristic of a pedestrian injury because of the force and velocity of that impact. The second group of injuries is when the person strikes the ground after that impact, and that's reflected by the laceration or red mark on the back of her head, and then reflected by a line on the skeleton diagram across the skull, which is a fracture from ear to ear at the base of the skull, and 2 fractures in the occipital area or back of the head, which you see in the posterior skeleton, which extend basically to the base of the spinal cord. Internally, corresponding to that impact with the ground, there was subarachnoid hemorrhage or hemorrhage covering the brain, and also a tear at the level of the brainstem from that impact. Also, from the ground contact are multiple rib fractures. On the left, they were the upper ribs. There's little marks near the scapula on the left, and mid-ribs on the right. You can see the little marks there. And as a result of the impact that caused the fractures, there were also contusions of the lung bilaterally on the inside, and hemorrhage, we call retroperitoneal hemorrhage, which is the area around the kidney on the right side. So there are 2 groups of blood trauma.
And ma'am, I'm going to give you a pointer. I think it's hard maybe for the jury. I'm having a hard time seeing some of the dots
Okay.
on the skeletal diagram.
Objection. Whether to see it is
Overruled.
grounds for the overrule.
Relevant.
Again, if you can just briefly describe what you just testified to, or briefly point to what you testified to.
Objection. Action answer.
Overruled. The witness may answer.
Okay. So the first type of injury from the car are the skeletal, the fractures of the pelvis here, and the external marks here at the heights that I've indicated from the hood of the vehicle. The toes are seen at this time. If you could bring them up. Right here. On the top of the toes, when they're lifted out of the shoe, there's often scraping, and that's what you'll see. Then the second group of injuries from the contact with the ground, if you can go down now, is a laceration to the back of the head from contact with the ground, a fracture across the base of the skull, ear to ear, fractures to the back of the head on the right and the left, and internally subarachnoid hemorrhage and the brainstem tear. In the chest, fractures here, ribs 3 and 4, and 5 and 6 on this side, with also contusions to the lungs, pulmonary contusions bilaterally, and retroperitoneal hemorrhage, or hemorrhage in the soft tissue around the kidney area. And just because it's flipped, this kidney area, the right kidney, is in this area of the skeleton, right above the areas of the fractures of the pelvis.
You have measurements on the third diagram from the left-hand side. What is the significance of those measurements? You had talked about the height of the car. Did you see the suspect vehicle, or did you go to look at the suspect vehicle in this case?
Yes, I did.
Overruled. She may answer. Go ahead.
I did. On November 23rd, I went to Fleet in the county complex where the car was being held, and I examined the car, looking for points of contact between the car and the pedestrians, and I also looked at the configuration of the vehicle, like the height of the hood, what the wheels look like, what the tires look like, where the bumper was, where the damage was, and took multiple pictures.
And would the observations that you made on the third diagram from the left and those measurements, that would be consistent with the measurements taken of the hood height of the suspect vehicle?
Yes, it's typical of the more SUV type of configuration of a car. I mean, a very low sports car would have the hood would be low and the bumper, and if a bumper protrudes, then the bumper might be the leading edge. But SUVs have kind of a flat front and a higher hood. The hood that I measured and the vehicle was damaged was 42 centimeters, but that's only at one point because the configuration of the hood had different shapes as the metal was curved over the wheel well and so forth. So these measurements, 38.5, 37, 32.5, are pretty good for the height of a SUV type vehicle at the point of contact at the pelvis.
Thank you. You may have a seat. Ma'am, can you describe for the jury the fatal injuries that were suffered by Ms. Duran?
The head injuries, the brainstem injury was quite severe. That would alone be fatal. The pulmonary injuries and the rib fractures could also alone be fatal, causing respiratory compromise. And the pelvic injuries could alone be fatal, causing hemorrhage. So she died of multiple blunt trauma, but each area of injury was quite severe in and of itself.
Would that be consistent with her being struck by a moving SUV weighing in excess of 3,300 pounds?
Absolutely.
Hearsay.
It's overruled. She may answer.
It's typical of a pedestrian injury. It's typical of an injury with a SUV configuration, and the speed would be at least considerable because of the momentum which resulted in these severe injuries.
When you say the speed would need to be considerable, what does that mean?
I will explain. Injuries are proportional to the energy delivered, kinetic energy. Kinetic energy, the formula, is 1/2 times mass. Mass would be the 3,300 pounds times velocity squared. So velocity is like really critical. So if you look at severity of injuries and speed of the vehicle on a graph, the graph doesn't go like this. It's not when speed increases, injuries increase that way. Injuries increase like this because velocity is such an important part of the equation.
Thank you. Moving next to the autopsy that you performed on Jane Kulik, I would direct your attention to State's Exhibit number 61.
Yes.
And also I'm going to project in front of you State's Exhibit 167, which is the diagram, I believe, that you created for to assist in the testimony today.
Yes.
Let me know when you see that diagram.
I see it.
Okay. And does that accurately depict the findings that you made in your autopsy protocol?
Yes.
Okay. I would ask the court to admit State's Exhibit 61 and admit and publish 167.
Where's 61? Objection, where's 61?
You should have that. It's not been on the screen. It was provided to you previously.
That'd be the autopsy protocol for Jane Kulik.
All right, Exhibit 61 is received. Exhibit 167 is received, and permission to publish is granted.
Now, ma'am, directing your attention to November 23rd of last year, did you perform an autopsy on Jane Kulik?
I did.
And can you describe your findings during that autopsy? And if you can use Exhibit 167 as well as the pointer and the screen to your right.
Okay. So Ms. Kulik had 3 types of injuries. She had the first kind we discussed, being struck by the vehicle. We have an impact to the left hip here at 39.5 inches, and we have pelvic fractures on the left here. We have injuries to the tops of the toes. Now, she had no shoes when I saw her, but the sock on the left foot was torn right in the area of the toes. Also, there's an abrasion to the top of the foot. That would be considered with being taken out of her shoe. So that's from the car impact. Then second, we have injuries from hitting the ground. We have a laceration to the back of the head. and we have some abrasions on the left side of the face and the nose area. The third type of injury she has is being run over by a tire. So we have a squared off abrasion across the upper abdomen, lower rib area that was sharply demarcated as I drew there. So it's not as if the abrasion blended into the skin, like if you do a sliding motion, but it was quite sharply demarcated. And associated with this injury, her liver was like lacerated, multiple tears in the liver, bleeding from that liver injury. She had multiple fractures on the right side of her chest. Anteriorly, she also had lower rib fractures posteriorly here. So the pressure of the tire compressed the liver, and it also compressed the part of the chest. The diaphragm on the right was also torn. There's also looked like a tire mark on the lower part of her left leg. There were no fractures under that site. So she had impact from the vehicle, impact to the ground, and then crushing from the tire.
What did you determine the cause of death to be for Ms. Kulik?
Multiple blood trauma.
And the fatal injuries, can you describe those for the jury?
Her injuries from being run over were probably the most severe, with the multiple rib fractures and the crushing of the liver. Also severe, however, was the pelvic fractures. Pelvic fractures, I didn't maybe explain, cause a lot of bleeding because your aorta divides in the pelvis into your iliac arteries, so it's a very big blood vessel, and also your inferior vena cava is there. So if you damage any blood vessels in the area of the pelvis, you're damaging pretty large caliber vessels, and you can lose a lot of blood. So, and also there's bone marrow in the pelvis. So pelvic injuries, especially when they're fragmented, as it was in her case, can be very, very serious. So I would say those were the two, and then the rib fractures, and I didn't mention, she also has pulmonary contusions on the right and hemorrhage in the retroperitoneum on the right. So those injuries, the chest injuries, the pelvic injuries, and the abdominal injuries, each were very serious and could have been fatal individually.
And is that consistent with Ms. Kulik being struck by a moving SUV weighing in excess of 3,300 pounds?
Yes.
Hearsay.
Overruled. Transfer my stand.
Yes.
Thank you. Finally, ma'am, I'm going to direct you to the autopsy protocol for Wilhelm Hospital, which is Exhibit 60. That should be in front of you.
Yes.
Did you prepare a diagram documenting your findings through the autopsy protocol?
Yes.
And I'm going to show you what's been marked as State's Exhibit 168.
Yes.
Okay. I'd ask the court to admit Exhibit 60, which is the autopsy protocol, as well as the diagram contained in Exhibit 162. Or 168, I'm sorry. And permission to publish 168.
Objection.
Noted, it's overruled. Exhibits 60 and 168 are both received. Permission to publish. Exhibit 168 is granted.
What was the first one?
60.
And ma'am, did you perform an autopsy on Wilhelm Hospital on November 22nd, 2021?
I did.
And can you explain for the jury your findings that are contained on Exhibit 168?
Yes. Mr. Hospital had similar types of injuries from the impact of the car. He had a very rectangular shaped bruise, 42 inches above the heel to the back of the left hip. And he also had a bruise above, right around the back of the knee, slightly above and slightly below, but extending between 16.5 and 24 inches above the knee. This hip bruise corresponds to the fractures of the left side of the pelvis, right here. He also had foot injuries. Instead of the toes, he had marks to the back of both heels, and that could be because of the type of footwear. Again, I saw Mr. Hospital without clothing, so I did not see the shoes. They were taken off at the hospital because he had surgery, but he did have injuries that we often see in pedestrians as well, whether the shoes were taken off or just the friction from being struck. Then he had the injuries from hitting the ground, which were lacerations and abrasions to the head on the right side and on the back. And the result of that was a fracture on the right side of the head. But this is kind of also interesting and shows how this injury occurred. The fracture's on the right side of the head, but the bruise to the brain and small subdural is on the left side of the head. That's called contre-coup. And that type of injury occurs in a moving head injury. So his head was moving, hit the ground on the right, caused the bruise on the left because of the rebound of the brain striking the skull. So he had injuries from being struck by the car and injuries from hitting the ground.
Now, you testified, first of all, about the injuries to the back, the second diagram from the left, and the height of those injuries. Are there any relevance of the height of those injuries as well as the measurements that you took of the suspect vehicle, which was a red Ford SUV?
Yes. When I measured the side of the hood, I got 42 inches. There's a picture with a tape measure showing that. So that corresponds well to the height of this particular pattern injury. And the height of the top of the bumper, because now the bumper is not a shiny chrome protruding bumper, but it's kind of a flat bumper that's painted the same color as the vehicle, so it's rather broad, is about 26 inches, which would correspond to a strike to the back of the left leg there.
Thank you. And you had testified that unlike the other two people that you had performed autopsies on, were those people brought to the medical examiner's office from the crime scene being Main Street?
Objection. Leave the witness.
Mr.
Hold
Rand,
on, overruled. She may answer.
I'm sorry. Mr. Rand was brought from the scene, and I saw her at the scene before I did the autopsy. Ms. Kulik was brought from Waukesha Memorial Hospital, where she was pronounced, and Mr. Hospital was brought later because he was treated at the hospital.
And can you describe, or did you determine the cause of death to be for Mr. Hospital?
Multiple blunt force trauma.
And the fatal injuries for Mr. Hospital, can you describe those for the jury?
Objection. Answer.
Overruled. She may answer.
Okay. Mr. Hospital's most severe injuries were related to his pelvic injuries, which he lost a lot of blood. They required to put a coil to try to obstruct the bleeding vessel to stop it from bleeding. It was not accessible surgically. They had to put like a coil through the vasculature. But also the impact here caused an injury to the thoracic duct, which carries your lymph fluid. And as a result of that injury, he also had an accumulation of fluid in both chest cavities of the lymph fluid that occurred during the hospital course, which impaired his respiratory status. So it's an indirect cause of the injury, the accumulation of the fluid, but they both were related to the impact of the vehicle. His head injuries, it's harder to assess because he died. He did present with a change in consciousness, so it's possible those head injuries would have been independently fatal.
And would those fatal injuries and the injuries that you've described, would those be consistent with being struck by a moving SUV weighing in excess of 3,300 pounds?
Objection. Leave the witness.
Overruled. You may answer.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Nothing further, thank you.
Any questions for this witness?
I do. Your primary field is in the medical field. Would that be fair to say?
Yes.
Any reason why you would be inspecting a car if that's not a medical professional thing?
The examination of anything that's related to injuries in the people that I later examine is relevant in my specialty of forensic pathology.
So examining the vehicle would be important to your medical assessments in what way?
Because the injuries that people sustain, whether it's a vehicle in this case or anything else, it's important to correspond the nature of the implement being the car. So it's possible I would be shown a car that would be not consistent with the injuries.
So it would be fair to say you've done numerous autopsies in your time as a medical professional. Would that be fair to say?
That's true.
And as you just said, examining the vehicle would be essential to your medical expertise. Is that fair to say?
Examining the vehicle is important to interpret the injuries. I'm not sure that, I don't know if that's the answer to your question.
So if you were doing an injury assessment based on if the injury was caused by a different kind of instrument, would the same apply to having to view that?
Yes, if in cases of gunshot wounds, I ask to see the gun. In cases of stabbings or blunt trauma, I ask to see the weapons that they think were used so I can determine if they are consistent or not consistent. I can't make matches, like precise matches, but I can say it looks like a baseball bat or it looks like a pair of scissors, that kind of thing.
It would be fair to say if in a case of a gunshot wound, as you brought up, it wouldn't be, it would, let me back up. Would you say it would be hard to assess the gun being that it wouldn't be the actual gun, but the bullets that caused the injury?
Well, actually, I don't examine the bullets, but I would examine the gun, especially, for example, if it's a contact wound. So if the muzzle of the gun touches the skin, then the muzzle could leave a mark. So then I could say the muzzle of the gun shown to me might match the mark.
And if it was something similar to that, the muzzle type thing, that would be, the mark would be from the heat. Would that be fair to say?
No, not actually. It's actually from the contact of the metal. So it's more of an abrasion than a burn.
So in a case like in a case like that, what would be the significance of the actual inspection of the gun?
I'm going to object to this question. I think it's a little bit of field of where we're at.
Grounds.
Overruled. She may answer. She brought it up as an example. I'll allow a little bit of leeway, but go ahead.
Could you repeat your question?
What would be the significance in a case like that, as you stated? You view all types of instruments, gunshot wounds and things of that nature. What would be the significance of inspecting the actual gun in terms of the injury?
Well, I may be able to say that the mark on the skin, for example, is consistent with the outline of the muzzle of that particular weapon, looking at the dimensions and shape.
So what if it was used from a distance? Then what would be the essential reason to inspect the gun?
Depending on the distance, sometimes the pattern of stippling, like for example, if there's a flash suppression or something used, that can play a role. If it's very far away, then the actual characteristics of the weapon are more general. In other words, the size of the hole, for example, or might reflect both the size of the caliber of the gun or the velocity. So it depends on, distance does play a role on what I would be evaluating.
Do you know if at the time you did the autopsies, if any of the victims you performed the autopsy on had any underlining illnesses at that time, any cancers or anything like that that may have been going on at the time that you did the autopsy?
Yes, I would make observations of any natural disease processes that I saw at the time of autopsy.
Did you observe any?
Yes.
Do you recall from who that was?
Well, Mr. Hospital, he was an older gentleman. He had some heart disease, as I recall, a pacemaker, some coronary artery disease. Ms. Kulik, as I recall, had a large fibroid. That's what I remember. I could look and clarify my memory further, but those are examples.
Can you explain to the jury what is a large thyroid? Is that the word you thyroid?
Fibroid.
I'm sorry.
Yes. It's
fibroid.
a benign uterine tumor.
Is that a form of cancer?
No.
And you said the older gentleman had some fluid buildup in the chest. Correct me if I'm wrong. I don't want to misquote you. Some type of fluid around the chest area.
Correct.
And from your recollection, that wasn't caused by the vehicle?
That was. He entered the hospital actually with no evidence of that fluid, but it's lymphatic fluid from the thoracic duct, from a thoracic duct injury. So over the time he was treated, especially with the fluid resuscitation, because of the blood loss, the fluid collected in the hospital as a rupture of that thoracic duct injury and was in the pleural space surrounding the lungs.
So that it would be fair to say that came about once he was already at the hospital.
That's true.
And you said he had a pacemaker. Would that have any effect whatsoever on what might have been going on in his chest at the time?
No, and because he was in the hospital, the function of that pacemaker was well documented while he was being monitored.
Was it pretty active, still working properly at that time?
It was.
Even with the loss of blood, as you say, he had a loss of blood. Even then, was it still working pretty good?
Yes, the loss of blood had no effect on the electrical function of the pacemaker.
And were you at the parade at the time of the incident?
No, I was called after.
So at the time you were called, did you know any information about the incident?
Yes, because I was called in my function as a medical examiner, I was informed about the death of numerous people, injuries of more, and that this was a result of a car going through the parade.
Do you recall if it was referred to as a car or a SUV?
I'm sure I was told it was an SUV because the vehicle in question was in custody at the time.
And you were already privy to that information before you arrived at the scene?
Either before or at the scene.
Do you recall whom informed you of that?
It could either have been my staff, who were the first people notified, so they would have reported to me what they were told, or it could have been detectives at the scene who I also interacted with.
So it would be fair to say you don't really recall?
Not specifically.
And you said you observed damage to the vehicle when you were able to view it?
Yes.
Would you say it was extensive damage, or did you really look at one specific area? Or let me rephrase that: were you really focused on one certain area of the vehicle when you viewed it?
Well, when I was examining the car, actually the crime lab was there. So we looked at the entire circumference of the vehicle, and the vehicle was also on a lift, and we looked under the vehicle because we were questioning whether there was clothing perhaps or other physical evidence that would be important to document. So I would say that I looked at the car quite comprehensively, although it was not my job to document damage to the vehicle per se, other than what related to my autopsy interest.
And that would be specifically looking at the hood of the vehicle to determine how it fit with your medical expertise?
Well, I paid attention to the front end of the vehicle, which is the part that typically is involved in pedestrian strikes. And those are the parts that I paid more attention to in terms of measurement than, say, I don't know, but it would be wherever the damage is, because now I'm thinking in some pedestrian strikes there are cracks to the windshield or injuries to the side mirrors and so forth. So I paid attention wherever I thought the damage would be that would be relevant to my cases. But I did take measurements of the front end.
With your expertise, would you determine that all of the damage that you observed would be caused strictly from hitting one thing or numerous?
I can say that there were multiple areas of the car that had damage, so it would seem unlikely to be from one impact, because in my experience, it's, you could have a frontal impact, you can have a side impact, you can be rear-ended, but there were dents, if you will, in multiple areas of the car.
So from your expertise, that could have came from a number of different things.
That's true.
You made a brief observation about speed and velocity. Do you have any expertise in that area?
Only to the extent that I understand how injuries occur, and in terms of the transfer of kinetic energy, because all injuries I see in the body have to do with that kind of transfer.
Would it be fair to say that everybody is different, though?
Everybody is different.
So with May, I guess I would phrase the question by saying, something that may seriously injure someone else probably wouldn't seriously injure another person, based on your expertise.
Generally, things of a serious nature don't become not serious. I would say that different people might have this, there are differences in people and how injuries how different events might injure them. But I wouldn't say that something that's serious in one individual would be minimal in another. Even though there might be a range, it's not going to be okay for one person, but maybe deadly for another. That is not typically how it is.
But it can vary.
It can vary.
Do you recall how many people you were called to attend to the night of the incident?
How many people I was called to attend to?
Yes.
There were 3 victims on the road. Those are the ones that I saw that night.
Did you see anyone else besides those 3?
I later saw Ms. Kulik, who came from the hospital. Those were the people I examined that evening.
So it was just the 3?
The 4,
Oh, I'm sorry, 4.
yes,
And no one besides those 4?
correct.
Do you recall being notified possibly to testify in this matter?
Yes.
Do you know about when?
I knew always that this case would end up in trial. I mean, but I don't remember when I actually had a date and time for appearance.
And how would you know exactly that the case would end up in trial? And I say that because many factors could play out along, many different things happen over time.
You're right. That was probably a misstatement on my part. I thought it might go to trial, given the nature of the case, but I did not know for sure.
That makes sense, definitely. So you had an idea that you might be testifying.
That's true.
And when did you know for sure that you would be testifying?
But you really only know for sure when you're called to court. You get a subpoena and things can still change. So I guess that's the best answer I can give you.
Do you recall when you were subpoenaed?
No.
Was it fairly recent to now, or was it some time ago, a few months?
Probably not months, but I don't remember.
Do you recall whom you were subpoenaed by?
The district attorney.
Would that be referring to one of the district attorneys here today?
Sue Opper.
Do you recall what time you arrived on the scene after the incident that night?
It was about 10 to 8.
And do you recall what time you finally left the scene?
No, I don't recall exactly.
Would it be fair to say you were there for quite some time?
Probably around an hour or so, and then we continued our work at the medical examiner's office for a couple more hours.
And after you were subpoenaed, did you were you in contact with Attorney Opper after that?
Yes.
Did Attorney Opper ever state that she was the plaintiff in this matter?
Objection, relevance.
Sustained. You do not have to answer that question.
Grounds for the sustain, Your Honor.
You may ask your next question.
Were you ever made aware of the plaintiff in this matter?
Objection,
Grounds.
relevance.
Sustained. You do not have to answer that. Please ask your next question.
Grounds for the sustain, Your Honor, before I continue.
Ask your next question.
Do you even know if there's a plaintiff in this matter?
Objection relevant.
Grounds?
Sustained.
Reason for the sustain, Your Honor?
Ask your next question.
No reason for the sustain, Your Honor?
Ask your next question.
Do you know of any claims filed in this matter by you or anyone else?
What are claims?
Any reports filed, any filings made on your behalf or anyone you know?
I'm actually not sure I understand that.
I would object to it. It's vague.
Grounds?
Sustained. Sustained is to the form of the question.
Did you make any claim of being an injured party in this matter?
No.
Do you know of anybody that has?
Objection relevant.
Grounds?
Sustained.
Reason for the sustain, Your Honor?
Relevance. Speculation. Vague.
Have you had any opportunity to view a complaint in this matter?
Objection vague.
Grounds?
Sustained is to the form.
Have you ever seen a complaint in this matter?
Objection vague.
Grounds?
Sustained as to the form.
Have you ever at any time had any interaction with the plaintiff in this matter?
Objection.
Grounds?
Sustained.
Reason for the sustain, Your Honor?
Vague. Relevance.
I would object to that sustain. You said vague and relevance, relevant to the
Sustained.
case.
Next question, sir.
It's relevant, Your Honor. Jury deserves to know.
It's overruled.
I respect that. Jury deserves to know, though.
Jury will disregard the last statement made by Mr. Brooks. It's not his time to testify. Comments made by the parties or attorneys are not evidence.
Have you ever seen the plaintiff in this matter?
Objection relevant.
Grounds?
Sustained.
Reason for the sustain, Your Honor?
Same as before.
So that would be relevancy and vagueness.
Ask your next question.
Was today your first time ever seeing those exhibits that were shown?
No.
You've seen those before, those videos?
Videos?
Yeah, the exhibits that were shown.
Diagrams?
Yes. I'm sorry, I didn't know that's how you identified them.
Oh. Well, I drew them.
Oh, those exact ones?
Yes.
Oh, so okay. I wasn't aware of that. I apologize for that question. And so I'm assuming at some point you turned those over to the district attorney. Would that be fair to say?
Today.
Oh, today. Any reason why you didn't previously turn those over before you actually were called to test, or before you knew that you would be testifying today?
I decided to prepare them for the purpose of testimony. They didn't exist before today.
That's interesting. So this was really like a 11th hour, bottom of the night thing for you to get them prepared and be ready to go today then. Would that be fair to say?
No, I wouldn't say that. I mean, it's true, I did finish preparing them today, but I was, what shall I say? I was detailing them and wanted them to be as good as possible.
So how long did it take for you to detail them?
I guess I have to explain that there are no pre-existing diagrams of front and back skeleton and body diagrams in my office's collection of diagrams. So I spent time finding the proper diagrams, scaling them, composing them, and putting them in a format that I thought would be the best to illustrate the points I wanted to make. So I created the basic diagram, and then I decided on how to describe the injuries, and I, did one version, then I did another version. I wanted it to be very good, and so that's why I can say it didn't exist in the form you saw today until today, because that's what I was doing.
So would it be fair to say that you have been working at this for some time then, to get it the way you...
A few days.
Did you anticipate that you would be using those diagrams?
Yes.
So I'm assuming that some type of conversation had to be had in order for you to work that hard on those diagrams. Would that be fair to say?
Yes.
And you had that conversation with Attorney Opper?
Yes.
To your knowledge, why would you, well, not why, take that back. To your knowledge, what would be the reason why you weren't already asked to develop those diagrams? Meaning, why weren't you asked this months ago in advance?
I don't think that anybody thinks about what exhibits might be used in a trial until the trial approaches, would be my answer.
But it would be fair to say that you just testified that you didn't know for sure if there would be a trial.
Correct.
It was an assumption.
Correct.
Had you ever created any diagrams like that before this incident?
I'm sorry. For these cases?
Or at any time before this particular case?
Are you still you're not referring to these particular cases?
These particular, the way that you did these, had you ever done this before this incident?
I've used diagrams in many, many trials. I just didn't have a diagram that displayed the body and the skeleton in this manner. I had no pre-existing form, but I use diagrams all the time.
So for this particular case, you decided to go a little bit extra. Would that be fair to say? Grounds?
Sustained. As to the form of the question.
Would it be fair to say then that for this particular case, you decided that you would want a diagram that was a little bit more defined?
What I decided was we had 3 decedents, and I thought it would be easiest for the jury to understand the complexity of the injuries when talking about 3 people sequentially if I could compress the information. Otherwise, a typical autopsy might have a skull diagram, and then another page a body diagram, and then another page a skeleton. It would be multiple pages. And I thought that would be very difficult when we're talking about 3 different people.
So had you thought of that before in any other cases that you've done before this one?
I don't remember testifying about 3 pedestrians in trial in one sitting ever before.
No. I wasn't asking if you've testified at a trial before. I was asking based on the explanation that you just gave about making it easier to read the diagrams. Had you ever thought of that before this particular case?
Yes, it's not unusual for me to create my own diagrams specific to a case.
What I meant by that question was the way that you designed these particular diagrams. Had you thought of doing it this way before this particular incident?
Objections or relevance?
Grounds.
Sustained.
Grounds for the sustain, Your Honor.
Next question, please.
Do you recall when you completed all your medical work for this particular case?
But the autopsy report was signed in February of 2022. So my medical work, my conclusions were concluded at that time.
So about 8 months. At the time that you concluded your reports, were you already thinking about forming the diagrams for the injuries?
No,
So that kind of came about during the process of possibly knowing that you might testify.
the diagrams were created as court exhibits.
Today.
Completed today.
Do you recall at what time they were completed today? Was it morning or shortly before you came in, or
Objections or relevance?
grounds?
Overruled. She may answer.
I think I actually completed them last night, but we got the copies made this morning, and they were not given to Ms. Opper until today. So I think they actually were completed in terms of my sketching last night, but they were not, I had to get color copies made and they had to be submitted. So I would say, I thought of them as being done this morning, but I was working on them last night.
No further questions.
Please redirect.
Briefly. Ma'am, to follow up on these diagrams that have been presented in court today, are all the findings that are contained in those diagrams from the autopsy protocol?
Yes.
Objection.
Overruled.
Relevancy.
Overruled.
And ma'am, could you have brought in a it's Halloween, so we see them all over the place, but could you have brought in a skeleton and described the same injuries?
Objection. Relevancy.
Overruled. It's
Objection.
redirect.
Hearsay.
She may. It's not hearsay. She may answer.
I could show you the broken bones on the skeleton. I couldn't show you the injuries to the soft tissues or the organs on the skeleton.
And if you had a doll or a mannequin, that would be something that you could show the jury, just like you did in these diagrams, where the injuries, the external injuries were. Would that be a correct
Objection, Brother
statement?
Vinci.
Overruled. You may answer.
That's true.
So is there anything on these diagrams that were not contained within the autopsy protocol that were turned over to the state months ago?
Objection, Brother Vinci.
Overruled.
No, there's nothing on the diagrams that was not, that isn't listed in the autopsy reports.
In fact, if I had a blank diagram in reviewing the autopsy protocol today, if I put a blank diagram in front of you, could you have made these same markings right here? And it would have just taken time, obviously, but could you have done it right now?
Objection, lead the witness.
Overruled. You may answer.
Yes, I could.
Thank you. Now, I want to talk briefly about Jane Kulik's autopsy. You had stated that you had discovered a benign uterine fibroid. Is that correct?
Correct.
Did that in any way, was that a factor in her death?
Objection, hearsay.
Overruled. She may answer.
No.
And with regard to Wilhelm Hasbo, was the presence of a pacemaker in any way related to his death?
Objection, I asked that in my cross and she answered.
Overruled. It's redirect. It's proper. The state may ask it. You may answer.
No.
The coronary disease that you testified to on cross-examination, did that play a factor in his death?
Objection, same reason.
Overruled.
Already
You may
answered.
answer.
No.
The thoracic fluid found in Mr. Haspel's lungs that you said did play a factor in his death. Is that correct?
Yes.
What caused that fluid buildup around his lungs?
Objection, answered already.
Overruled. You may answer.
It was an injury to the thoracic duct that was caused by the impact of the vehicle to his body.
Nothing further, thank you.
All right, thank you. You may step down. My jurors are okay. Just thought we'd stand for a bit, but then keep going with testimony. So everyone may stand. Do a little stretch break. We haven't done one of those in a while. Probably a good thing the camera can't capture you. Stand for a bit. This chair hurts if you want. The non-chair. When you're ready, have a seat. All right, the state may call its next witness.
The state call Father Matthew Witter.
Sir, if you would please make your way to my witness stand, which is all the way up here, upper riser to my right. When you get there, please remain standing. Raise your right hand. My clerk, Teresa, will swear you in.
Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you're about to give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you, sir. Please have a seat. The first thing I will have you do is state your first and last names for the record and spell each.
My name is Matthew Witter, Matthew, and then last name Witter, Widd as in dog, ER.
Thank you. Go ahead, your witness.
Sir, how are you employed?
I'm the pastor of the Catholic Community of Waukesha for 4 Catholic churches in the city of Waukesha.
And what are those Catholic churches?
So St. William, St. Joseph, St. Mary, and St. John Newman. We're also associated with Waukesha Catholic, the school.
Okay, thank you. And when you say the Catholic community of Waukesha, 4 parishes, and you're the pastor at all 4?
Exactly. Yep. There's 4 of us priests. I'm the pastor. There's 2 other priests and a team, that kind of works together.
So you actually do sermons or services at each of the 4 churches?
Yep. Exactly. So we'd the four of us priests kind of go around and exactly wherever we're called to be. We're kind of on a bit of a rotation, but we're at all those four churches.
Directing your attention to November 21st of last year, were you at the City of Waukesha Christmas Parade?
Exactly. I was the Catholic community of Waukesha Catholic. We're walking in the parade.
Okay. And when you say, were there just one group of people, or when you said the school and the church?
we were one group.
Okay.
One group.
Did you have a float or anything?
We did not have a float. There was a banner, and the banner was kind of being carried at different times by a different amount of people, but otherwise we were walking different proximity to the front and back. We were spread out a little bit.
Approximately how many people were in that group that day?
Probably between 40 and 50.
Was there any type of formation?
There wasn't like I think at different times we were probably closer together, at different times we were more spread out. As the parade went on, I think, some people walk faster, some slower.
And no uniform, or did everyone wear the same type of shirt or sweatshirt?
We didn't have, no, it was somewhat cold, so we had different, kind of, trying to stay generally speaking warm. We had some little, very small kind of lights that we're kind of carrying, very small, just kind of that sense of, not everyone had them, I didn't have one, but that sense of kind of bringing the light of Christ into Christmas. And
Thank you. I'm going to show you a variety of exhibits. First, I'm going to publish them or put them on the screen in front of you, and I'll direct your attention there. I'll ask you some questions about them, okay? So first I'm going to start with Exhibit 129. And let me know when you see that exhibit in front of you.
okay, yep, I see it.
Okay. And have you seen that picture before?
Yep, I have.
And do you know who that was taken by?
I believe it was taken by Jason Peckloff. He's at least the person that I saw the picture from, so it was probably circulated, but yeah.
Okay. Do you know when it was taken?
It was taken before the parade started with some of the group.
Okay. So this wasn't all the people in your group?
Not everyone, but a chunk of people.
Okay. Are you familiar with pretty much everyone within this picture?
Yep.
And there are names that are associated with certain people who we are considering injured parties in this matter. Do you see those names?
I do.
Do you see the arrows that are associated between the people and the name?
I do.
Can you briefly look at that and let me know if those names are correctly associated with the correct people?
Yeah, to the best of my ability. Juan Marquez is kind of in the back. That's a difficult one to say. It's probably him. On that angle, I couldn't say like 100%, but very, very probable.
I would ask the court to admit Exhibit 129 into evidence and publish it for the jury. Would ask the court to publish.
The objection is overruled. Exhibit 129 is received and permission to publish is granted.
Can you briefly kind of go over the people who are named and their relationship with the other people in this picture? For example, I see some kids with the last name Perales Alvarez.
Exactly. Yep.
Can you kind of describe what their relationship is to one another?
Exactly. Yep. So Yamilet and Ashley, and then next to them unnamed is Yashleen. They're the daughters of Maria Alvarez Dominguez, as his name. You just say Alvarez Perales, actually.
Okay.
And then Jose Perales Alvarez.
Okay.
So those are connected there.
Okay.
And then Benjamin and Elliot Hallmark are siblings. Some of their other siblings are there too.
Okay.
Gregoria Romelia, she usually goes by Romy Perez, and Camila on the far left, that's mother and daughter.
Okay.
And then Juan in the back, his son David is up front. His head is kind of ducked to the side.
Okay.
So those would be the relationship connections.
How about Adair Lopez Revelar?
Objection, leading the witness.
Adair is...
Hold on, there's been an objection. I need to rule on it. The objection's noted. It's overruled. And you may answer.
So Adair is his mother, Marisol, was also in the parade. She's not in the picture, though.
And how about Maria Alvarez Dominguez? I don't know if you addressed her yet.
Oh, yeah, Maria she's the mother, and I forgot Eileen. I know I was missing someone. Eileen is on the far right. So Eileen with the A, Yamilet, Ashley and then Yashleen, who's doesn't have a name box by her. They're the kids of Maria and Jose, who's got just barely see the red hood.
And does this accurately reflect kind of the clothing that they were wearing while they were marching in the parade on November 21st of last year?
I believe so.
Okay. I'm now going to direct you to Exhibit 128 because I thought so can you identify the person depicted in that photograph 128?
Yeah, so as it says, that'd be David.
Okay,
He'd be
so
one
that
of the
is correct.
younger kids.
He was kind of hidden a little bit in Exhibit 129, so I wanted to get a better picture of him. I'd ask that this be admitted into evidence. I'm sorry, was this taken on the day of the parade? Does it appear?
It would definitely appear. I'm not familiar with the picture, but it would definitely appear.
That appears to be the street that you guys
Exactly.
walked on
Yep,
and the clothing
definitely.
that he was wearing.
Objection, leave the meeting.
Overruled. Father, do me a favor and just wait until the question is fully asked before you answer it. I know it can be very easy to anticipate, but the very nice lady in front of you is taking down a record of everything that's said, and it just makes her job a little bit more difficult if that happens. It's okay. So hopefully his answer was clear. If not, you can re-ask.
And I'm sorry, that accurately reflects what you believed you would have seen on November 21st of last year.
Yes.
I would ask that Exhibit 128 be admitted into evidence and published to the jury.
Objection.
Exhibit 128 is received and permission to publish is granted. The objection is overruled.
And I'm also going to then show you on the screen in front of you Exhibit 121. Let me know when that's showing in front of you.
It is.
Okay. You had indicated that in front of the group was a banner. Is this consistent with what you're seeing, or can you describe generally what you're seeing in Exhibit 121?
That would be our group, somewhat close to the beginning of the parade route. So that's the banner. That's Bob carrying it on one side, and Jason Pekloff, as is noted, on the other side, where there's St. Matthias in the background. St. Joseph is kind of right in front of that, towards the beginning of the route.
Okay. And there are other names that are associated with people. There's a box with their name with a red arrow going from the person to the name. Are all of those correctly diagrammed?
Camila certainly is. Jason certainly is. Adair certainly is. Maria certainly is. Juan, I couldn't say definitively that that's him. And Jose Perales, I believe that's him, but I couldn't say definitively on that particular angle.
Okay. And with regard to Jason Pekloff, specifically, since we've identified the other people in this photograph through Exhibit 129, that is Jason Pekloff, and he's correctly named in this diagram?
Yeah, definitely.
Objection. Everybody was not positively identified.
I would note that the witness identified most with certainty, others without. So the jury should just keep that in mind at this point. I don't believe there's been an offer, though, or a request to receive it just yet. So I'll withhold any of that.
And Your Honor, I'm going to move Exhibit 121 into evidence, ask that it be published with the understanding that Father Witter indicated that Jose Perales Alvarez and Juan Marquez, it would be consistent, but he cannot say with 100% positivity that those are those two individuals.
Objection. It was not said with certainty whatsoever. The answer was he's not sure. Exhibit 121 is received as noted by
the state, permission to publish is granted.
Sir, again, in looking at this exhibit, which is 121, other than Jose Perales Alvarez and Juan Marquez, which you indicated you weren't positive about, the other people whose names are and arrows are on that picture, you can positively identify them?
100%.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to show you what's been marked as State's Exhibit 122. And again, is this consistent with a picture that was taken at the very beginning of the parade where the other picture was taken from?
That's correct.
Okay. And there are two names associated with two individuals on this picture. Can you positively identify that those individuals are the people in this picture?
Objection, leading the witness.
Overruled.
Yeah, William Mitchell and Yamilet Perales, that would be 100% certain.
Thank you. I would ask the court to admit Exhibit 122 into evidence and publish it for the jury.
Exhibit 122 has received permission to publish. Granted.
And again, this accurately reflects the identity of William Mitchell. If you can just circle William Mitchell in the photograph, it is a touch screen in front of you.
I should.
And Yamilet Perales Alvarez. Thank you. Moving on to Exhibit 123. Can you identify the individuals who are named in this exhibit?
Objection, the names are on there.
Question was whether he could identify the individuals who are named. So
That's a big arrow pointing to there.
your objections noted. It's overruled. You may answer the question.
So each of the people, Benjamin Hallmark, that arrow is correct. Maria Perez, that is correct. That is Luke Hallmark. Marisol, that would be Marisol. And then Gregoria, I would say 100% I would attest to that picture.
And again, does this look to be taken in the same vicinity as the other pictures I've shown to you?
Yeah, definitely, it's towards the beginning of the route. Exactly. That's probably St. Matthias right there, and St. Joseph will be right in front of us.
I'd ask the court to admit Exhibit 123 into evidence and to publish it for the jury.
Objection, relevancy.
Overruled. Exhibit 123 has received permission to publish is granted.
Again, sir, I'm just going to ask you to circle the people associated with the names as I call them out. Benjamin Hallmark, I think you had previously identified in Exhibit 129, but where is he? And if you can circle him. Okay. And Maria Perez.
Maria.
Luke Hallmark. Marisol Lopez Gutierrez. And Gregorio Romelia Perez, I think you said you know her as Romy.
Yeah, she also goes by Romy.
Thank you. I'm now going to show you State's Exhibit 124. And let me know when you see it, I'm sorry. And does this, again, looks like it's taken from the same angle as the prior exhibits. Do you see the name of Elliot Hallmark and Father Pat Heppy?
I do.
And are the arrows associated with the people that you know as Elliot Hallmark and Father Pat Heppy?
Objection, leading the witness.
Overruled. You may answer.
Yep, 100%.
Thank
Those
you.
those would be correct.
Thank you. I would ask the court to admit Exhibit 124 and publish it for the jury.
Objection, relevancy.
Overruled. Exhibit 124 is received and permission to publish is granted.
And again, just to clarify for the jury, Elliot Hallmark, can you circle him? And Father Pat Heppy, can you circle him? Now, was he one of the other three pastors?
Exactly. Yep. Father Pat is the pastor emeritus in the Catholic community of Waukesha, so he's one of the four of us priests.
Okay, thank you. And finally, I'm going to show you what's been marked as Exhibit 125. Let you know when it's on your screen.
Yep.
And the final two of the people that we did not identify in that first picture, Exhibit 129, Lori Loken and Margaret Pekulis, and she goes by Peggy. Do you see them in this picture?
I do.
Are they correctly identified?
They are.
I'd ask and again, this photograph is taken at the same location as the others?
Yep.
Okay. I'd ask the court to admit Exhibit 125 and allow it to be published for the jury.
Objection. Relevancy.
Overruled. Exhibit 125 is received and permission to publish is granted.
Thank you. And if you can circle Lori Loken and Margaret Pekulis. Thank you. We can take this exhibit down. Do you recall as you were marching or walking in the parade, what group was in front of you?
The group in terms of we were the Catholic Memorial Group was the group in front of us. Behind us were the Dancing Grannies.
Okay, thank you. That's what I was looking for. What, at some point, was your attention drawn to something during the parade? Something unusual?
Yeah, so we were all of a sudden kind of heard a scream, and my experience was I turned to my left, and there was a red SUV just flying down the road. My next experience would be kind of hearing it, kind of striking people.
And I'm gonna just, because we have to put that on the record, that you put your fist to your palm of your hand, making a striking noise.
Yep, just kind of like a
Objection.
pounding sound, I guess you'd call it.
Overruled. The description may stand. Keep going.
Thank you.
Next question.
How many times did you hear that?
So for
Objection,
me,
the witness.
Overruled. You may answer.
I heard 2 times.
Where were you when you were marching in this group? Were you as you're walking down Main Street, were you on the right-hand side of the group, which would be, I don't know why I can't get this right. The right side would be, I believe, the north. Or were you on the left-hand side of the street, which would be the south? Or were you in the middle?
I was more towards the right-hand side of the street.
And did you look back? And you said you looked back and saw the red SUV, correct?
Yeah, the way I would describe it is if the car would have hit me, it would have hit me. I kind of saw it as it was entering into our group.
And the 2 impacts that you heard, did you see those impacts?
My mind blocks that part out of it, so I couldn't say who was hit in those impacts. What I could say is that my next encounter was that there were 3 people from our group that I don't believe would have been the ones with impact that were lying more or less right in my immediate path.
So 2 right in front of you on the right-hand side of the street,
Yep.
as you testified?
On the right-hand side. Those were the 3 people that I was right by then.
And before that car went through, were those 3 people on the ground?
Definitely not.
Where did this impact take place? Do you know approximately where on the parade route?
Yeah, so it would have been past Curry Insurance. There would have been, I believe it's Main Street Bar and Grill, and then there's kind of an unnamed bar, and then there's Planned Parenthood. So those would be it's kind of a Main Street, between Main Street and that kind of unnamed bars where it happened.
Okay. I'm going to show you what's been marked and admitted into evidence as State's Exhibit 15. It'll not only be, I'd ask that it be published as well.
Go ahead. Exhibit received.
Objection. How many times do you need to publish the same picture?
Your objection's noted. It's overruled.
Of course.
on this picture, there are different groups that appear to be on this picture. Can you describe, what does this appear to be a map of?
Yeah, that would be Main Street. That'd be our groups, the groups of the parade.
And do you see your group
victims.
on this map?
I do.
Would it be in the left-hand side of Exhibit 15?
Objection, leading the witness.
Sustained, hold on. Sustained, please rephrase.
Where would you see, you said you saw your group, where do you see your group on this map?
On this map, our group is furthest to my left.
Can you circle it? And that would be, in that arrow, that star that you circled, then is attached to a list of names, is that correct?
Objection, leading the witness.
Sustained, please rephrase.
Yes. Do you see a list of names and an arrow on that map?
Objection, leading the witness.
Overruled. You may answer.
I do.
And where does that, do you recognize the names that are on that map?
Objection, leading the witness.
Overruled. You may answer.
Yep, I recognize all those names.
And it appears that approximately how many names are on that list?
Objection, leading the witness.
Overruled.
19.
Didn't mean to test you. And were all those people, to your knowledge, injured as a result of being struck by or indirectly struck by the vehicle in the parade?
Objection, hearsay.
Overruled. You may answer.
Yes, that's correct.
Thank you. We can take Exhibit 15 down. So when you looked around and saw the red SUV, did you hear the impacts first, or did you see the red SUV first?
I saw the red SUV just flying on the left side. I mean, flying is a relative word, but it was, going fast. It was going faster than anyone in their right mind would be driving in that scenario.
Could you estimate the speed?
Objection, hearsay.
Overruled. You may answer.
From being on that street in other occasions and kind of walking over there, the speed limit was 25. The car, in my estimation, was going faster than I would see a car driving in normal times down that street.
So in excess of 25 miles per hour?
Objection, hearsay, leading the witness.
Not hearsay. It's a clarification question. Your objection noted. It's overruled. You may answer.
I would say yes.
Now, when you said that you saw the red SUV coming to your left, I know you described your path of travel being on the right side
Exactly.
of the road. So it's to the left of you. Would it be more towards the middle of your group or to the left of your group? Or on the left-hand side of your group?
I would say it was on my left.
Okay. So you're not sure how far away it was when it passed you?
No, it was on my left. I was not struck. It was on my left. It wasn't.
Did you see who was driving the vehicle?
I did not.
After did the vehicle go past your group? Did it drive past your group?
I believe it did. I saw it just fly by, and my attention immediately was drawn towards the three people that were on the ground in my vicinity.
After the car went by, did you ever see the car stop?
I simply I saw the car fly by, and then the next thing I knew, there were three people in front of me on the ground. So my attention went right there.
Did you see anyone else on the ground after the car passed, other than the three people you initially saw?
There were other, so all around them, there were different kind of, as time played out, kind of pockets of people.
Could you describe who you saw after the car went through who appeared to be injured?
So the three people that were in my path were Father Patrick Heppy, and then Maria Perez, and William Bill Mitchell.
Did they all appear to be injured?
Yes.
And did you meet with those people after the parade? Did you talk to them or meet with them?
Yeah, so my attention was really drawn towards those three that were kind of right there. Father Pat was he was kind of completely knocked out, and then he kind of came to, and he was kind of put on the side of the road. And then I more or less stayed by Maria Perez on the side. She was in agonizing pain. There were some other people that came. William Mitchell was also there, also with severe injuries and major pain. So I more or less stayed there. And then Father Pat and I, being priests, we live in the same, we call it the rectory or the house. So when he went into the hospital, I joined him to go. And then so my next immediate experience was going to the hospital and then encountering more of the people that were in our group who were already at the hospital.
So the three people you had direct contact with would have been Maria Perez, William Mitchell or Bill Mitchell, and Father Heavy.
That's correct.
Objection, leading the witness.
I believe that's what his testimony just was.
Correct. It's overruled.
And you went to which hospital?
So Father Pat was taken by a squad to Waukesha Memorial. So I joined them in going to that hospital.
Did you see any of the people that you had observed on that list on Exhibit 15 at Waukesha Memorial Hospital?
Yes, I did.
What observations did you make there of the people you saw?
Yep. So immediately I saw Eileen Perales, who was sitting off to the side with some facial issues and some other injuries. So Father Pat was he was placed in a room, and I kind of was helping Eileen a little bit. And then there was also Peggy Pachulis, was also in the waiting room already when I got there.
Did she have any observable injuries?
She had, her ankle was splinted already. She was waiting. And then shortly after that, then Benjamin and Elliot Hallmark were also in the general waiting room. And I ended up also seeing them. And then my next experience would be with the different situations in families, it became apparent that unfortunately some families were split apart in different injuries. And so I was with there was CAT scans that needed to be done on some of the children. So there were 4 beds. And I was, especially with Benjamin and Elliot Hallmark, their parents were out. And then it also turned out that Eileen and Ashley Perales also then were waiting CAT scans. So that would have been my next encounter.
What injuries did you observe on those individuals?
So at the time, I mean, Ashley had some, you call it facial lacerations and major injuries there.
And I think you already testified about Eileen. How about Elliot and Benjamin Hallmark?
Yeah, so they were both in, at the time they were getting checked out for brain situations. It was clear Benjamin had a major fracture in his leg and also a major golf ball coming out of by his eyes. And Elliot also then had some injuries.
And I'm just going to go through the remainder. If you saw them or either that night or in the following days, let me know. And if you know that they were injured. Maria Alvarez Dominguez.
Objection. It's hearsay.
It's not hearsay. It's asking about his knowledge, not what he heard. So you may answer the question.
Maria was injured. I don't know the full scope of her injuries.
Okay. And how about Gregorio Romelia Perez?
She was very, very, very severely injured. Major issues.
Could you observe what those injuries were?
Objection. Hearsay.
Overruled. You may answer.
Pelvis fractures, and she was in rehab for about 4 months with still walking with a cane.
She still is walking with a cane?
That's correct.
Lori Loken?
Lori sustained some major heart issues, so she had a major procedure on her heart.
Marisol Lopez Gutierrez?
I don't know the full extent. Marisol was impacted. She suffered I believe a fracture, wrist fracture. some other major soreness. She's healing.
Adair Lopez Gutierrez.
Adair was the car ran over him. He didn't suffer any major physical injuries, but was impacted.
Juan Marquez.
Juan suffered a major leg fracture. Has had a couple surgeries.
David Marquez.
David was struck, took on some bruising, but no major injuries.
Jason Peckloff.
Objection, hearsay.
Overruled. You may answer.
Jason suffered a severe concussion and some ankle injuries, an ankle injury.
Yamilet Perales Alvarez.
Objection, hearsay.
Overruled. Go ahead, you may answer.
Yamilet was came very close to losing her. Major head trauma. Was severely hurt.
Jose Perales Alvarez.
Objection, hearsay.
Overruled.
Jose also was very severely hurt with leg injuries. He's had about 10 surgeries at this point. Still
And-
walking with a crutch.
And Camila Perez Gonzalez.
Objection, hearsay.
Overruled.
Camilla had an orthopedic injury. He's had a couple surgeries.
Looking further. Thank you, Father.
Any cross-exam questions for this witness, sir?
I do.
Please proceed.
See. I don't have too many questions for you, Father. Do you recall when you knew for sure that you would be testifying in this matter?
I got an official word on October 1st to plan to be here, I believe, on last Wednesday.
And to the best of your knowledge, do you have any reason why you would be testifying on behalf of an injured party if you are not an injured party?
Mr.
Grounds.
Overruled. You may answer. If he knows.
My thought would be that as the pastor, I would have a more wide-ranging kind of knowledge of different people's situations as a pastor, where some people might, that's what I would assume. But
And you testified to observing quite a few injuries. How can you assess the injuries just by looking at the people?
can you clarify what you mean by that? Like, what are you getting at?
For example, if I was to see someone injured laying on the ground, I could essentially say, "Oh, it looks like this," but how can I be certain that that's what it is? So my question is, being that you observed a lot of injuries, how were you able to assess what they were just by looking?
Well, the question mischaracterizes his testimony, so I'm going to ask that you rephrase.
How did you know the injuries just by looking?
It still mischaracterizes his testimony. That's not what he said. He was asked about whether he was aware.
Yeah, that he observed injuries. So how could he know
He observed some, so you need to be specific as what point in time.
the injuries that you saw at the hospital? How were you able to say for sure what those injuries were just by observation?
Yeah, so some of it is seeing people at the hospital and then part of it then is, so there's the immediate seeing people in the hospital, and then there's the later times of seeing people in the hospital or seeing people in other contexts.
So would it be fair to say that you were told those injuries either by medical professionals or by the people?
Exactly. So if people would say, this is my injury, I would believe them. If they'd be in the hospital, if I see people with crutches, wheelchairs, then I would say that's probably accurate.
But you didn't know for sure yourself until you were told.
Yeah, I'm not a doctor, so I'm not the one diagnosing an injury. I can observe what they say, I can observe what I see, and then if I see people with crutches, wheelchairs,
that's
then
what
I'm
I was getting at.
there's probably truth there.
Do you know, because you testified to seeing those, some of those people after the incident, would that be fair to say?
Yes.
Do you know if any of the people you saw after the incident filed any claims in the matter?
Could you clarify by what you mean by claims?
Did they file for to be an injured party in the matter, or did they file for any medical bill support or anything of that nature? To your knowledge, do you recall any of that?
We certainly told as many people as possible to get involved in the Waukesha parade support and other means of help. I can't speak specifically for each person what they did or did not do.
Can you explain to the jury what you mean by the support that you are referring to? Was that like a group formed, or was that sort of like an event of a GoFundMe account or something like that? Can you give some clarity on that?
Yeah, there was the Waukesha parade fund that was, I think, an international type of thing. There was, our parish had a fund. There were GoFundMes. There were any number of different things. There were different encounters to allow people to come together and talk about what had happened and seek start healing from the emotional part of it.
And by international, that would be assuming worldwide. That'd be fair to say?
Yes.
So it would be fair to say that there were financial interests attached to this incident.
Objection is how it relates to this witness's testimony.
Grounds.
Sustained.
I should try to answer the question.
No, I sustained it. You don't have to answer
Okay.
that.
All right.
You can rephrase, but as it relates to how it was asked in this witness, I'm sustaining it.
Well, it was actually because he referred to some GoFundMes being set up and anything. So my question was, being that it was a wide-ranging scope by him saying international.
What's your question? I sustained the objection.
Was there any financial interests attached to this incident?
And I'm going to object for the same reasons before.
Grounds.
It's vague, unclear, overly broad. Sustained as to the form of the question.
Any idea how much money was raised for the I guess I would say GoFundMe's, groups, support?
Objection as it relates to this witness's
Grounds.
testimony.
I'll allow it a little bit of leeway as it potentially could relate to bias, not of this witness. He made no claim, but go ahead if he knows. Subject to you following it up with other, I guess, witnesses later on.
I know, so the Catholic community of Waukesha had an opportunity because people wanted to give, and so there was $73,000 that came into the fund that I'm aware of, in the Catholic community of Waukesha, that we dispersed in different ways. There's still, I think, $3,000 left. That's for kind of community healing events. What the end of what GoFundMe's reached, what the Waukesha Foundation Fund reached, I don't know. But I know the Catholic community of Waukesha was 73,000. Yeah, specific. I couldn't say 73 what, but 73,000, I think.
And did that go straight towards the victims to help them in any way?
So an example would be, there are many people that could not work because of being hurt, or they had situations where a loved one was severely hurt and they had to be at home or going to the hospitals, nursing homes, and taking care of them. So there was, and I have no idea the ins and outs of, payment of hospital bills and things like that. But I know people were, they could not go to work because of some of these scenarios.
And you stated you didn't see the vehicle approaching at the time when it got to where you were. Would that be fair to say?
That's correct. It was very close to me when I saw it.
About how close to you did the vehicle come?
The vehicle was on my left side. I saw it probably, very close to when it was on me, I would say, to my left.
So you were on the right side of the street at that point?
It was on the right side of the road.
So it'd be fair to say it was on the opposite side of the road from you.
It was on my left. Where on the left? If you show me a picture of the road, like point to where it was on my left, I could not say that it was on my left.
Did it come pretty close to you at any time when it was passing you?
The car did not hit me. It was on my left.
You referred to it as a car, as you just said. Was it a car? Was it an SUV? What was the vehicle?
I would describe it as an SUV, to be specific.
Any reason why you would say car?
Objection, argument.
Grounds?
Overruled. He may answer.
For me, people that know me, I'm not a car person, so car is a wide-ranging descriptor to me.
Would it be fair to say you wouldn't call a bus a car, though, right?
Objection, argumentative.
That's argumentative, sustained. You don't need to answer that one.
When asked earlier, when you were asked about if you saw anyone else on the ground or something to that effect, you said as time went on, you had observed someone else laying on the ground. Can you explain what you mean by as time went on? Was that a significant time that passed, or a very short time that passed at that point? Do you recall?
My testimony is there were 3 people that were right in front of me, and I really spent time. Father Pat then was taken to the side as he waited for a squad to come. I really stayed with Maria because there weren't a lot of people around there first, so I really kind of focused on staying with her. From looking up and waiting, there'd be officers or, different medical personnel, whether they were, I can't say, what type of personnel they were. People would come and check and kind of evaluate. But I could see other kind of pockets of people.
Did you observe the other pockets of people that weren't with your group being struck at any point in time?
The only experience that I saw was our particular group. At the time of the incident, I had no idea what had taken place behind us.
And would it be fair to say you had no idea what had taken place in front of your group?
As I stated, only saw what I saw.
At any time when the vehicle was passing you, were you able to see into the vehicle?
The vehicle was going very fast. So I would not have had a picture of who was driving the vehicle.
But you can't estimate a good speed that the vehicle may have been traveling.
My estimation was the vehicle was traveling faster than I would usually see a car traveling down Main Street. So over 25 miles an hour.
So would that be that you said traveling faster than you would see a car traveling down Main Street? Would that be in terms of if there was a parade actively going on, or even without any traffic on Main Street?
If I was at Main Street right now watching cars go past, if I was just on the sidewalk, I would say that the parade was traveling faster than those cars would be traveling.
I'm saying in terms of even if there was no parade, if it was just a normal day.
That's what I'm saying. On a normal day, the car was traveling, in my estimation, faster than you would see a car traveling on a normal day.
And you weren't able to get any description of the driver of the vehicle?
Not at all, no.
Could you at any point tell if there was more than one person in the vehicle?
I would not have been able to, no.
Do you recall being interviewed by any law enforcement at that time?
I was at the hospital, as I indicated before, that night, and there was a law enforcement person that kind of ducked into one of the rooms and asked, a couple questions, what I would have seen, or.
So very brief, not extensive, long, extensive type interview, but very brief, just a few questions.
In the hospital that evening, yes, there was a law enforcement. That was a brief interview.
Did you give any, or were you interviewed by any law enforcement after that night?
I was not interviewed until getting a subpoena about this particular case.
Do you recall when you received that subpoena?
I can't say a specific date. I can say it, after that first one, October 1st was when I got the official, to report, to testify to the case. I can't remember what date it was before that.
Were you in contact with any law enforcement about this incident leading up to the October 1st subpoena that you received?
Not before I talked to the DA that first time.
And do you recall what DA that was?
It was Susan and
Excuse me.
Susan.
May the record reflect that there was a right hand gesture towards the prosecution table?
I believe the witness identified our District Attorney Susan Opper as the Susan. The record can reflect that.
And was that October 1st time the only conversation you had with Attorney Opper?
October 1st was when I received a notification that I was to report to court. I spoke with Susan, sometime in the month before. We spoke once.
But in the month before the October 1st subpoena?
So October 1st is when I formally got the subpoena that I was to come in. It would have been sometime in September where I was, notified to come in and talk to the DA. So I talked to the DA once.
And at that time in September, you weren't yet subpoenaed.
I was, how do I say this? This would be a point of clarification in the sense of I believe that I was subpoenaed to come in and talk to the DA. I'm not sure if that's a subpoena or that's what the correct wording is. I was told to come in and talk to the district. I'm not sure if that's a subpoena, but I believe it would be more than come in if you want to. I believe it was kind of like you need to come in, not if you want, you can, if not, don't. I'm not sure what the terminology for that is, but that's how I would take it. If that's a subpoena.
No, that's not a subpoena. The subpoena is when you actually get the subpoena paperwork by mail or I don't.
Mr. Brooks, you need to ask a question.
Can I get to it, Your Honor?
No, because you're trying to define something which would be testifying, which you cannot do at this time. So the jury will disregard his last comment, but go ahead and ask a question of this witness.
Something else. Wow.
Mr. Brooks, that was inappropriate. Do you have any other questions
Yes,
for this
I do.
witness?
Yes,
Please
I
ask
do.
them.
During your conversations with Attorney Opper in September and October 1st, when you received the subpoena, at that time, were you provided the complaint in this issue?
What do you mean by complaint?
The complaint would be a reference to the charges in this matter. Paperwork that would state the charges.
Objection, Meg.
Grounds.
Overall, he may answer if he's able.
I mean, to me, seeing what happened and seeing everyone that was hurt,
No.
to me it was very obvious what this was about.
Did you see at any time any paperwork related to the charges in this incident?
So there'd been the subpoena sheet that would have had your name and any number of different.
What do you mean my name? What are you referring to?
I believe it would have said Darrell Brooks on it.
Are you aware that I don't identify by that name?
Objection, argument is
Sustained.
sorry.
So is that what your subpoena said? Was that the language of your subpoena? The logistics?
We've been down this road under 906.11, Mr. Brooks. You're not. I need you to ask a relevant question to this witness.
That was relevant. He said what was on his
No,
subpoena.
you've talked at length about the subpoena. So under 906.11, move on to a new topic, please.
Are you aware of who the plaintiff is in this matter?
Objection, relevance.
Grounds.
Overruled, he may answer.
I believe that you would be, or excuse me, you're the defendant.
I would be the plaintiff?
Excuse me, at my mind, you're the defendant, I believe. the plaintiff would be.
If you know, do you know who the plaintiff is?
All those who were hurt under the title of the state of Wisconsin. That's how I would identify it.
That's how you would identify it. So, do you know if anybody who was hurt that identified as the plaintiff?
Objection, relevance.
Grounds.
I think this witness has testified he's really not sure what the plaintiff is. He kind of guessed. He gave an assumption.
Sustained.
He did.
Foundation.
He did answer the question though.
Sustained. Next question.
So, to the best of your knowledge, the plaintiff would be the representative of the people.
Objection is relevance.
Sustained. You're now asking him to make a legal conclusion, which I will not have him do. It's also not relevant.
Do you know if any injured party who claims to be the plaintiff in this matter?
Objection, relevance.
Grounds.
Sustained. Mr. Brooks, under 90611, please move on to a new topic.
Are you aware that only an injured party could be the plaintiff in this incident?
Objection,
Grounds.
relevance.
Sustained also misstates the law. You don't have to answer that. Mr. Brooks, new topic, or under 90611, I will close the cross-examination.
How does that mischaracterize the law? An injured party has to make the
Under
claim.
90611, you haven't asked a question. I will give you one more opportunity. Don't question me. Please ask a question of this witness. The jury will disregard his statement as it mischaracterizes the law, and he is not testifying. He's asking questions at this time.
Are you aware that the state of Wisconsin is an entity and cannot claim to be an injured party in this matter?
Objection.
Grounds.
Sustained. All right. Your cross-exam is now closed under 90611. Does the state have any redirect for this witness?
Briefly.
Go ahead.
Sir, prior to the red SUV coming through your group, did you ever hear a horn honking?
Objection.
Overruled. You may answer, sir.
Objection. Hearsay.
It's not hearsay.
I personally didn't, but
That's fine. Now I'm going to show you State's Exhibit 15 again and ask that that be published to the jury. This has already been admitted into evidence.
Go ahead.
Objection. What was the answer to the last question?
The record speaks for itself. Next, the witness can consider the annotations.
And again, you previously identified the individuals in the Catholic Communities of Waukesha box. In looking at that box again, were all those people on the road as part of the Catholic Communities of Waukesha when the red SUV went through?
Objection. Leading the witness.
Overruled. You may answer, sir.
definitely, 100%.
And we can take that exhibit off the screen. One final question. When you spoke with District Attorney Susan Opper in your meeting that you testified to, did she ever tell you what to say today?
Objection. Hearsay.
Overruled. You questioned his credibility. You questioned his talking to the state. He may answer the question.
The only
Go
reason
ahead.
why I'm objecting, Your Honor, is because
Your objections noted.
Attorney Opper is not asking the question, so how would Attorney Basie know what
Mr.
Opper
Brooks,
said?
I'm not going to explain the legal procedures. You go ahead, ask the question. You may answer when she does. Do you recall the question?
Yeah, I do. She did not.
Okay.
No.
Did she tell you to tell the truth today?
Objection. Relevancy.
Sustained is to the form of the question.
Everything that you testified today, is it truthful?
Objection. Hearsay.
Overruled. You may answer.
Yes.
Nothing further, thank you.
All right, thank you. You may step down. I would like to get through one more witness, but I want to take a short comfort break for everyone, so I'll rise for the jury. Thank you. Mr. Brooks, not now.
Not allowed to.
Not now. The jury is in this courtroom, and you will show respect for them and for this court.
Respect for them would be
Mr. Brooks,
telling them the truth.
stop. I'm putting you on notice that you are on the verge of this court creating a curative instruction about your frivolous arguments. I will not have you claim legitimacy for what are debunked, frivolous, sovereign arguments.
Then
That is why
prove it.
your questions
Prove it.
are being
Prove that it's
objected
frivolous.
to,
Prove
and
that it's
why
frivolous. Prove it.
all the cases that we've already referenced, sir. We are in recess. We'll be back
And
in
prove
5
it.
minutes. Thank you, everyone.
I don't agree to a estoppel. Can you prove?